how can you be staying up on the news and consuming content regularly without overwhelming yourself, falling into a rabbit hole, or, you know, just not thinking for yourself, I guess. And one of the biggest things that I've found that helps me is take specific times out of the day to consume content. Don't consume content all day, because if all you're doing is reading the news constantly, number one, you're going to be overwhelmed. But number two, you're going to probably start to hate the world and to hate life. It's not easy to be just consuming news all day. It's mentally exhausting. You start reading things about inflation and the Fed and banking and crime and people who are being politically sassy with each other, to put things very mildly, and congressional decisions being made. It just goes on and on. There's no way to ever get to a point where you'll know everything that's going on. So you should consume content specific times throughout the day, and just give yourself a break. Allow yourself to be mentally refreshed by something else. Don't take it upon yourself to feel the burden of consuming content all day. It's not something that anyone can do and ever feel ultimately wiser or better for it. It doesn't mean you'll be ill-informed. In fact, you'll probably be very well informed. But what's difficult about news consumption all day is it forces you to forget everything else that's important in life. And so by that, I mean relationships, work, family, relaxation, health, spiritual growth. These are all things that are antithetical to the news. The news is always going to depress you to some degree, just because of the messed up and fragile and, terrible world that we live in. Now, I stay informed because I want to know what's coming down the pipeline. I want to be prepared for things that will happen next, but I'm not going to consume the news to enrich myself or to necessarily learn more about the subject. It's more checking in periodically to see what's going on, and just to understand what's coming next. What should I be looking out for? How can I prepare myself for that? The next thing I would recommend in how you listen to the news and consume fresh content like that is pick a couple trusted sources. Pick 3 to 5 sources where you'll get most of your news from. The reason I say this is because not only are most news sources out there biased and corrupt, and they're just going to be peddling opinion when they should be sharing news, is when you are able to find unbiased news sources, you're going to get the information that other people probably wouldn't tell you, but that you need to hear anyways. Because that really is the news. The news isn't the information that you want to hear in the way that you want to hear it. It's what's going on right now, whether or not you realize it and whether or not you agree with it. So I'm going to share a couple sources of my own for people that either are looking for unbiased news sources or at least minimally biased news sources. And then, people who have tried that already, but it didn't go so well, and they're looking for other sources that they can trust. So allsides.com, that's ALLSIDES.com, Allsides. They specifically curate and pull news from all across the spectrum. So and they will rate the news based on what their leaning is. So you'll see stuff like Fox News will be on the right. You'll see things like CNN will be on the left. You'll see things like Reuters and USA Today and Axios, stuff like that is more centered. You'll also see things like the Epic Times and Reason and the New York Times, Los Angeles Times. You'll see Washington Post. So the point is, they're going to give you all these major and smaller news sources. They're going to tell you what their political leanings are, what their news bias is. They're also going to give you their own report, and you can sign up to support them monthly. I think for as little as $5 a month. There's probably bigger packages too if you're interested in that. But what I really like about All Sides is I can see exactly what's going on all sides. I can see what the left is saying. I can see what the right is saying. And then what I typically read is the center, because I don't really care what the left or the right is saying. I might on occasion, or I might to see, if it's laugh-worthy, but I'm not going to read something that, I'm not going to read something from the left or from the right on the basis of this is correct and this is what I should be reading more of, because I know that they're not going to be giving me the full story. Another one that I've really been using a lot recently, and it's very similar to All Sides, but it gives you more coverage percentages, is Ground News. That's GROUND News, Ground News. There's a site and an app. Similar to All Sides, you have to pay to be a premium member and get their full coverage benefits and the full range of content that they offer. But you get to see, what percentage of the left, center, and right is covering a particular element or a particular news story, and then go from there. You can also save these things to Pocket, and Medium is another good reading app. Medium is a little bit broader than just a news app, but yeah, I really like what these apps are doing. I will be honest, I go to sites like Intellectual Takeout and Reason. I'm trying to think. I've started to read Axios a little bit more. They're pretty good with their coverage. I often feel like Axios is giving me just the facts and very little spin, if any. And I try to start broad and then go down from there. And it's really important to have those unbiased news sources. You can see what other people are thinking and saying about a particular topic, but then it gives you the chance to think what you think about it. And that's what brings me to my next point: is it's important to consume news, but it's important to reflect on it as well. I firmly believe that you can't fully understand the news, you can't fully see things in context unless you take some time to reflect. And if you aren't taking time to reflect, then you're really just thinking what other people think about things. It's important to have a worldview in which to consume news, because if all you're doing is consuming news and you're not understanding it in the context of a worldview, then what that comes down to is everything you see is just essentially random. We never know what direction things are heading in the world. If we have a worldview, which basically you can sum up a worldview in a couple questions. A worldview is, where did we come from? What is the purpose of life? Where are you going? And what happens after you die? And if you can answer all of those questions, then those answers are your worldview. If you can't answer those questions, it either means that you're being dishonest with yourself and you know what your worldview is, but you're not admitting it to yourself, or you haven't done research to understand what your worldview is. So that's why it's so important, because the worldview I have dictates the way I understand everything else that's happening. Now, obviously, what I'm not trying to say is that there's always going to be things that happen in the world that you don't understand why it's happening or why it's happening now. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is it's important to understand the direction that the world is heading. And if you don't have that personal worldview for yourself, everything that's happening in the world, you're just going to be subjected to it. You're not going to have a firm sense of, I understand the world is going this way with monetary policy or economics or socio-cultural issues. You're not going to understand those in the terms of worldview. You're just going to see, why is all this chaos happening? Why are all these bad things happening? And so, yeah, firm up your worldview. Figure out what you believe, why you believe it. Because if you don't, you're just subjecting yourself to mass chaos.